Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Top 5 Friday. Every Friday we get together and we have a look at the top 5 something, probably to do with Blood Bowl, because that's what we do. Now we've had a look at the top 5 best teams, the bash teams, the dash teams, the mid-range teams. And this roster, this list is definitely not the top 5 worst teams, but it is the top 5 most challenging teams in Blood Bowl. So that is the most challenging teams to score touchdowns and win games with. What I've done is I put a post out on all the social media channels and a bunch of you have let me know your thoughts on your top 5. So I've put those together and we'll have a look at them last. I'm going to go through my top 5 teams, the top 5 teams that I think are the most challenging to win games with, and then we'll find out just how wrong I am when we have a look at yours. Number 5, it's the Halflings. Okay, so Halflings, there's going to be a lot of you out there saying, nah, Halflings are easy. Halflings are easy, I can win with Halflings all the time. And you know what, you can win with Halflings, but that is the beauty of Blood Bowl. So I guess before we get properly stuck in here, we have to just acknowledge the fact that any team can win any match. If you're playing Wood Elves, you can run Halflings and you can win. You can outbash them, you can luck them, you can dice them, you can do it. But generally speaking, Halflings have got probably the most vulnerability versus strength and payoffs, okay? There's some other great stunty teams out there, but Halflings get a little bit stuffed. They're twice the price of Snotlings, they're the same speed of Snotlings, and while they're twice as strong, they're still very weak compared to everybody else. With a unique blend of lack of armour and lack of speed, they do struggle quite a lot. And their payoffs are 2 treatment. Nothing more. So you don't get a kind of mixture of other stuff. But that said, you can still win games with Halflings. And I played a ton of games with Halflings recently. Sure, Blood Bowl 2 style. To get kind of to grips with some of the best formations that I've seen other people use to set up with Halflings. And they've got a great amount of star players. So really, Halflings I find to be a challenging team to win with, and if you are going to start out on a league or in fact the tournament circuit, do not expect to win a lot of games with Halflings, but you can expect to have a lot of fun. And they do have a great, they're basically the Thunderbirds of Blood Bowl. Okay, there's just a massive choice of boosters to the team. You've got Carla, you've got Rumbelow, you know, you can go deep and go Deep Root or Morg, or you can do the proper thing and go Grack and Crumbleberry for that elite halfling element. They can do a ton of stuff, but the team itself is really challenging. The agility is average, the speed is low, the strength is low, and the armor is low, and your hopes need to be low. But with all that on board, Halflings are actually a ton of fun, and you can pull off some great wins. And they are very good in sevens, so actually just go watch 7 Super Series if you want to see Halflings have a great time. Number 4, it's more stunty goodness. It is Goblins. So I guess I've ranked this that Goblins are more challenging than Halflings, and that's fine. I think they're about on par. Okay, so where the Goblins have more toys, they've got a lot more toys. On their standard roster, you don't need star players. They have changed from the last edition to the new edition. They've got more intrinsic capability in their team, and they've lost the kind of smorgasbord of Goblin star players that the old Goblin teams used to use, where you had to keep your TV really low because you were relying on star players. That is now gone, and I think that's why I've ranked them a little bit higher than the Halflings, is because the difficulty here with Goblins is they're 40k a piece. They are basically proper player price. They're only strength 2. That sweet stunty 3+ with dodge and movement 6 means that they are, and armor 8+ means that they are actually pretty resilient and pretty fast and very capable. But you miss out on all that inducement money, and you have to cut things from your team. And that's the challenging thing here with Goblins, is to choose what not to use, because if you use all of the Goblin roster, it is very challenging. The Bombardier is great, but expensive for a Bombardier now, we've seen, and Hail Mary Pass is just wrecked as a skill, so that's kind of, that daydream is gone. God, you got Trolls. I like Trolls now. Ben has converted me on Trolls, and the fact they've got Loner 3+ has made Trolls better. They are trained Trolls, but they're still Trolls, so you've got 11 dudes, and 2 of them are going to have to be these strength 5 pieces that need a 4+ to do most things, unless you've got the power of friendship keeping them alright. Chainsaws are great fun. Bombardiers are great fun. Fanatics are great fun. The Doom Diver, although it only moves D3 squares now on the swoop, still makes a fantastic throw teammate element. But short of that, the Goblin roster is really challenging. Now, you can pull out some great rush moves. You can run really well as a team here with Goblins. You can cage, you can brawl, you need to use those strength 2 pieces to get you... You're going to have to support really cleverly. And I think that's what makes Goblins so challenging for me if you're starting out. You have to, very similarly to Halflings, abandon the expectation of winning, but you will learn a ton of stuff here from Goblins, and I think that's why I am so big on them. Trolls are challenging, weapons are fun, stunties are good. If you like rolling high on dice, if you are just willing to let the dice fall as they may, then you're going to have a great time. But generally speaking, a Goblin is going to go down against most players 2 dice almost all the time. You've got dodge, you can get away with a couple of it, but it's not going to be everywhere. And because they are 40k a piece, you don't tend to end up with too big a roster without giving up some TV for extra bribes or maybe the occasional star player. So Goblins, very challenging. They've kind of lost that star player edge, and now they're kind of in the world of, ooh, we need to play Blood Bowl as a Blood Bowl team instead of as a team plus X. My number three here is Tomb Kings. I actually think Tomb Kings are incredibly challenging to play. So I guess I've put this roster together thinking, right, if I'm going to go to a league, if I'm going to go to a 1100 TV tournament, what would I not recommend new players to do? What teams would I not recommend new players to take? To start with, okay, Tomb Kings are challenging. They've got their best agility is 4+. Alright, they've got a sure hands piece or 2, which means they're going to get better. They do have 4 big guys, and I think I failed to mention that on the last video, that Tomb Kings actually do have 4 strength 5 guys. I may have mentioned it once or twice, or 17 times, or 4 times. So Tomb Kings have so many strengths. Thick skull everywhere, quite cheap players. There might be 1 or 2 big guys on the roster as well. But if it goes wrong with Tomb Kings, you have got no speed. You've got a couple of, like, what is it, 4 speed 6 players. Everybody else is like speed 5 or 4. Okay, so there's no speed and there's no agility. A marked player on the Tomb King team is not going to dodge away very often. Okay, you're going to be stuck there, and it's going to be very easy for your opponents to base and mark your players so that you don't have that flexibility. Other teams have got the ability to bounce back, okay? They've got the speed to swap sides, they've got the flexibility to go for a handoff. Tomb Kings, you have to play every game in the next turn. You are already thinking, right, if I move this guy here, next turn I can move here. You've got to play that one step ahead. Now, I've seen Tomb Kings played brilliantly, and I've seen coaches do that where they contemplate what happens in the next turn, and they can go toe-to-toe with any team out there. We've seen Tomb Kings win a couple of tournaments in the last month, which is fantastic, but they are challenging. But being a challenging team does not mean it's not rewarding, and does not mean it's not powerful. It just means you have to play real well and, honestly, take some losses. Number 2 for me is vampires. So let's be fair, vampires were always really challenging. They were always challenging. They just had a lot more upsides in the old world. Now they've changed to animal savagery. There is 2 camps. Some people think it's got better. I'm becoming more and more pro animal savagery as we move along, because actually rat ogres are awesome, and I'm stand by my point on the Chaos Dwarf Minotaur. Having animal savagery makes it one of the best big guys in the game. Animal savagery is interesting. So the vampire roster is so challenging because you are playing with a team of thralls who are 40k apiece, movement 6, strength 3, edge 3+, armor 8+, I think. Yeah, armor 8+. That's it. That's what they do. So your team is basically hobgoblins or a bunch of armor-busted human linemen. Low value, which is something. And the other piece of your puzzle is the vampires. And the vampires are great. Okay, they're like 110k. They're strength 4, edge 2+. Okay, they're passing 3+, I think. They come with animal savagery. They come with hypnogaze as well, and regeneration. So vampires are going to stay alive. Asterisks, because they're not dead already. They stay not dead for quite a long time, which is brilliant, which means they can brew up and they can get those SPPs and they can get their skill ups and they can get to a point where they've got a bunch of cool things they can do. But the reason I think that they are a very challenging team to win with, especially at low TV, you want them to do stuff, and you got to roll a 4+. They are like better agility trolls, essentially. Except friendship isn't enough for these guys. They need to hit something. They're very upset. They're in a bad personal space, vampires, and I cannot wait for G-Dub to kind of revamp their roster a little bit. But for now, it's a really challenging team. You take 2 or 3 vampires. When you want them to do stuff, you have to have somebody next door to beat up, and that is fine. You can manage that, but it is a challenge because you need to always be thinking, if I activate this guy, I need to make sure I've got some support there. Or if I want to activate this guy but I don't care, I need to make sure his support is not next door or he's going to get punched in the head. And punching your own players in the head really does give a little bit of an advantage to your opponents. But if you get this roster cooking, maybe get some pro on the go to help you boost through and go for that sweet 4++ passing attempt with a passing 3+ Ag 2+ vampire. It is cool, and there are going to be so many series and so many sequences where the vampires pull off stuff that's just awesome. So if you like the teams so far on this roster, where you've got to position your team right, where you've got to hope your dice are right, and if that happens, you're going to pull off something really, really sweet. Vampires, as challenging as they are going to give you the kind of challenge that you personally are after, and when it plays off, it is going to be legendary. Number 1, for me, it's Nurgle. So Nurgle, bless them, have been chilling out, maxing, relaxing and cooling and shooting some Blood Bowl. Down in Tier 2, down at the bottom of Tier 2, down in the deep bottom of Tier 2 for a while now. But they've always had upside. They've always had the rotters. They don't have that anymore. Now, I'm not going to completely nerf Nurgle because they are challenging. They are not terrible. All of these teams that I have highlighted as what I consider to be the most challenging teams in Blood Bowl are not terrible. They win games. They've got advantages. They've got things they can do. Nurgle. You got 4 strength, 4 dudes with disturbing presence, foul appearance, regeneration. They are just waiting for 4 years worth of league to bring them into some skills. They've got the Beast of Nurgle, which is a very thematic and cool big guy. Tentacles are going to keep 2 players tied to it. That's removal. That is essentially soft removal at that point. If your one beast is tagging 2 of their dudes, you're playing 10 versus 9 on the rest of the pitch. And when 4 of your 10 against their 9 are strength 4 big dudes, it's even better for you. And then you've got Pestigors, who are just the star players of the Nurgle roster. They do not have a lot of skills to start with, but the ability to strength 4 horns blitz somebody right from the get-go is awesome. That means you've got 4, 5, 6 players looking for a strength 4 blitz. That means you can really pound some people. So the challenging elements of Nurgle are the complete lack of skills, and because their cool positionals are actually quite expensive, you do struggle to get the roster that you'd want to start with. You can take a bunch of Pestigors, but you're going to have to give up the Beast, or you're going to have to give up some of your Nurgle warriors. And you kind of want that whole thing to make you feel like a Nurgle team. And the Rotters, now they are Ag 4+, it means that you don't have flexibility at the rosters here. So if you look at Nurgle, they are now very similar to Tomb Kings. Okay, they are now very similar to Tomb Kings. They've got 4 big guys, and they've got Ag 4+ everywhere. You have to position yourself really well. But the 4 big guys on Nurgle are not strength 5. They're not this far away from getting strength 5 mighty blow and absolutely going ham. You don't start with block, and you don't start with sure hands. So Nurgle is a very blank canvas, and for me the challenge here is you are playing with a team that hasn't started yet. It's really interesting, and it's very Nurgly. Okay, Nurgle starts, they take some stuff, the stuff gets worse, but over time Nurgle keeps them alive and brews them into absolute dominating beasts on the pitch, and literally in some case. So the challenge of Nurgle is, how do I win games with no skills and with rubbish players? And that is a genuine challenge, and I think Nurgle, for me, have to be the most challenging of that, because all of these teams, you've got to play really well. But for Nurgle, you've got to roll well, you've got to position well, and you've got to just get skills well. And it makes it such a challenge. Nurgle was always difficult in 2016, but now I genuinely think Nurgle is going to be the hardest team to do well with consistently. Over the stunties, you can roll well with stunty, they've all got Edge 3+. Nurgle struggles. They're slow, they've got low edge, they've got a ton of punch though, and it's a great bash team. And that's the challenge, isn't it? Is you need to go for attrition real quickly. Once you've got the numbers though, you can snowball and Nurgle will be fine. So that's my top 5. Let's have a look at yours. Okay, so I'm just going to go through your rosters here. So looking at your scores and the comments you have made. Starting at number 5 for you guys, we've got Goblins. Then we've got Halflings. Okay, so I had Halflings and Goblins the other way around. That's not bad. Then you've got Ogres at number 3. So Goblins, Halflings, Ogres for you. Ogres being a challenging team. Ogres are a really challenging team. That's really, really, really fair. I think for me, they've got that stunty element though. So it's kind of like they're bound to be challenging. But you've got 4 or 5 Ogres. So the challenge is not anything except just murder your opponents. And you start with good skill sets. And I have played many games with Snotlings. And you know what? This is probably one of those elements where I don't find Ogres that challenging. Because I've played so many games with Ogres that I just know some sneaky tricks. And I've seen them do crazy stuff. Got a decent record with Ogres and I've played a ton of them with no rerolls, and I've learnt the best ways to play around them. So Ogres definitely deserve to be up there. All the stunty teams are challenging. If I was bringing a new coach to play Blood Bowl, would I recommend Ogres? You know what? I would let them play Ogres. The little guys can do those cheeky 2+ dodges absolutely everywhere. They're going to pull off some stuff, and the big guys are just there to maim. So I like that. Number 2, it's Snotlings for you guys, and you know what? That is very, very, very fair. That's really very fair. Are Snotlings more challenging than the other teams I've listed? Yeah, probably. And you know what? It's not because of their ability to win. It's how complicated the team is. You've got so many positionals. They are all, generally speaking, underpowered, and they are just reckless. The team is reckless. I do think they have a great capacity to win, and I don't think it's as difficult to win with Snotlings. That's not fair. It's not as difficult to score touchdowns with Snotlings as I think it is to some of the teams I've got on my list. But having the Trolls, having the Pump Wagons, having the Positionals, having the Bombardiers, having the Riotous Rookies and the massive swarming teams, yeah, Snotlings are complicated. They are complicated, and that I think is a fair point to say that they are challenging. And your number 1 was Vampires. And you know what? Vampires have always been challenging. They are taken a bit of a power decline, or they've just had such a shift change now. Because olden times, the bloodthirst, the bloodlust, you had to kind of plan for your dude to fail, and then you got to move and position. Now it's the other way around. You have to move a guy to prepare you to fail before they even activate. So it has got more difficult. It has got more challenging to run Vampires. I'm hoping that they get a little bit of a tweak, something to make them a bit more exciting, a little more accessible maybe. I think that's probably the difficulty here. And I think that might be why I've gone with my 3 tier 2 teams as my top 3 for challenging teams, is because I think they need to be made a little bit more accessible. There needs to be clearly an element there that you're like, oh, I want to do this because of this. Ogres is easy. I want to run a bunch of big dudes and murder. Okay, that's wicked. Vampires is I want to run a bunch of dudes that struggle to do really ordinary things and a bunch of really bland players to go with it. I'm not sure you're going to get a ton of people signing up for that. There are going to be some, Mark, looking at you, MJ Pilgs, who are going to be up for that challenge, and that is why I think I agree with you completely. Top 5 challenging teams, you deserve to have Vampires in there. Anyway, guys, hopefully this has inspired you to look a little bit deeper at some of these teams, because I think they are probably down the register in victories, but also in unexplained victories as well. Okay, you take a Tomb King team, you take a Nurgle team, you take a Vamp team, you take a Snotling team, a Goblin team, anything, and you pilot them well, and you get a good win record. You're doing something that not very many people have done, and that in itself is a challenge, and I challenge you to do it. Go, make it happen. Anyway, guys, thank you ever so much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy winning? Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.